5 minutes after 9 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. This is it raining out there, Ron? Somewhat wet. It's a wet Monday. Wet Monday. I don't know if it's still raining. I can see the concrete here at the mall. Looks like it has been rained on, so I presume it either is or has been raining. All right, our next guest has been with us before. He was asking if he had been, and we couldn't remember, and he couldn't remember, and I was just reading over the notes, and I definitely think he has been.
Yes, he has.
Back when we were talking about the end of the world, as we know it, according to the Mayan calendar, which we all had a slice of pizza after it didn't really end, just to celebrate. William Gladstone got up early out in California, and he's on the phone with us. He has a book called The Power of 12, a novel of science fiction and philosophical exploration. His approach to fiction is one I appreciate. It's the fact that he makes a case for something that's possible. I love that. He is an international expert on indigenous cultures. I can't say that word. He's a co-producer of the film called Tapping the Source. He's a literary agent, so he actually works doing what he's doing with other people, I guess, and a pioneer in the creation of the first print-on-demand book publishing company and the first ebook company. Wow.
That's pretty interesting.
The Power of 12. Good morning, William Gladstone. Good morning, William.
Good morning, Larry. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you for coming on the air with us. And what, did Kindle steal your thunder?
They certainly did. I was involved with two companies, actually, not just the first ebook, but the first device company. It was called Rocketbook. My friend Martin Eberhardt was the creator, and we were just too early. And we did okay, but we didn't get the thunder.
Oh man, that's horrible.
Timing is everything. It's all about timing.
But as an author, do you like the ebook? I mean, it's a convenience, I guess, but do you like it?
Well, yeah. Personally, I'm of a generation that prefers the old paper and binding and carrying books with me. But I have an iPad. I do read books on the iPad, and certainly for people under 30, I think they read the majority of books now on their Kindle or their iPad.
Right. I'm not a numerologist. I'm not even pretending I understand anything, but I've often wondered about the number 12, so I'm interested to hear what you have to say. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Number 12 is probably the most interesting number in the universe. Plato and Pythagoras believed that the actual structure of the universe is a dodecahedron, or a 12-sided cube. And every major religion that we've studied uses the number 12, whether it's the 12 apostles, the 12 lost tribes of Israel, or a variant of 12, such as 108 for the Hindu, 144 gates for the Muslims. 12 just seems to be a magical number
that is
essential to the structure of the universe. And most recently, we found out that same dodecahedron is the shape of our DNA, and no other shape would work for transmitting our DNA.
Oh, wow. That is even more awesome.
It's really magical. There's something really, really significant about the number 12.
And the fact that we have 12 months, that's the doing of... it's interesting. We've got the full moon happens, 13 times a year.
Yeah.
We've got 12 months, but we originally had 10 until the Caesar brothers came around, right?
Yeah. Then they messed everything up.
Right. So I mean, it's interesting that we ended up with 12, and you're right. And the 12-cylinder car is what I'm hoping to have one day.
Don't go anywhere without one.
So The Power of 12 is a work of fiction, but you actually, as I tried to imply in the opening, you bring into your fictional novel lots of things that are really factual. Are they historically correct, scientifically correct, or both?
Both, though I take liberties. That's why I don't do nonfiction. If I did nonfiction also, I think that I'd have some enemies that I would prefer not to have to address. Because I do talk about the Illuminati. I talk about the Bushes. I talk about, some people that I think are really focused on doing good. There's a project called Project Wake Up that is related to getting information out to everyone, not just to the elite. And that's actually a project that could be funded in reality. The novel also follows up on the indigenous beliefs, not just the Mayan belief, that we're entering a new cycle, and that this new cycle is meant to thrust feminine energy to the fore instead of masculine energy.
Man, I could use some of that.
Well, we all could, because feminine energy normally has more to do with forgiveness, with sharing, with using your intuition, and these are all qualities that in the recent 2,000, 3,000 years that we've just gone through for the development of our civilization have been, for the most part, not entirely, but for the most part, downplayed, and they need to be given more prominence.
That's interesting. We have discussions all the time because we do talk radio that, this group is responsible, that group is responsible. And I always say, you know what they all have in common? It's men.
So far, that's been true.
I mean, most
You've
of
had
them,
a few isolated incidents,
right?
But men have really created the world we live in today.
Yeah, and the problems, and the good stuff as well as the bad.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have too many female Nazis. There's a few of them.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Too many female Al Qaeda, but there's a few of them.
Much Indiana Jones.
But anyway, so
you also bring to light about the Constitution of the United States, and that's a fascinating observation.
Well, the reality is our nation was founded by extraordinary human beings. Yes, they were all men, but they were really extraordinary when you think of Jefferson and Adams and Monroe and Madison and the other founding fathers. And we've gotten so far away from the real purpose of our Constitution and of our public servants. The whole idea of service was the key to our nation.
Really?
It was not a privilege for your own personal amassing of material wealth to serve as a government official. It was to serve the people. And I don't think there's any reality anymore to that. You're serving your particular in-group, whatever that is, whether you're a Tea Party person or you're on the other side, but you're serving vested interests rather than really serving the higher purpose for which you should have been elected.
That's exactly right, boy. And it's a hard thing to sell, though, isn't it? And you know what? I often thought this is sort of a political discussion here, but new elected officials have every good intention, and something corrupts them. And I don't know why, and I don't know that it's all of them. But there's something that happens. I don't know if it's money or somebody who's very persuasive. And if you don't bend, if you don't do the will of the ones who are really trying to get you to do their will, do you suddenly find, are you in the news as somebody who quit or somebody who committed suicide? I've often wondered about some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it seems to be the case. I mean, I think back to that Jimmy Stewart film, what was it, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and obviously this has been an issue for a long, long time. Those who have power want to maintain their power, and they want to use their power to protect themselves. And anyone who threatens that, is definitely paddling upstream.
One of the things that science fiction writers have a reputation for is predicting the future. The future that is predicted by science fiction usually is along the lines of science or technology or something like that. In your case, am I right in assuming, and this is just an assumption, that the Power of 12 may be, even though it's fictional, predicting something more political?
It's predicting something more political. It's also predicting something more esoteric. In the novel The Power of 12, I actually explore what it would be like if extraterrestrial intelligence was implanted in what they call walk-ins in human beings on this planet. Now, many people believe this is not fiction at all, that it actually occurs. My point is not so much to debate whether it occurs or it doesn't occur, but is there a possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence, which does not necessarily mean human contact, but just intelligence that exists outside of our planet that is accessible to human beings. And many scientists do believe that there's something called a zero point, which is where all information continues to exist in eternity, which is accessible and which explains unexplainable phenomena, including, Mozart and other, savants who grab the music of the spheres, if you will, and other information. And how else could they have had that information?
That's interesting.
And I actually believe that the Mayan calendar itself, which is the most accurate calendar ever created and was created thousands of years ago, actually was, if you will, downloaded from the zero point by peoples who may have even preceded the Mayans.
Yeah, and would it be unrealistic to call that intelligence God?
You could call it God if you wish. I mean, scientists don't like to use the word God because it's political, and it starts getting into, well, I believe, right, rather than I measure. And science is about measuring, but it's the equivalent. And science is in this brave new world where things are changing, where you have, non-locality. In other words, something that happens that can't be physically connected to something else. The spinning of electrons is one of the experiments that have been done. The rotation is changed in one location, and that creates a change in a location that's not connected physically. So we're getting into real science fiction and real mystery.
I mentioned the 12-cylinder engine, and I'm going to use that just for a second here. I've often wondered why, when we have an invention, why didn't the second one happen first? Why everything? Have you ever thought that? Like, why didn't they think of the second one first?
Well, I'm not sure if you're talking about the phenomena. If Columbus hadn't discovered America, somebody else would because it was in the air. I mean, what often happens is ideas seem to be. As an anthropologist, I studied the work of Kroeber, the collective unconscious, and he had a belief and a theory that something would be in the air, and so it was the collective that was really creating and receiving information, and the individual who happened to stumble upon it first or second, we don't really know. We just know which one is still being talked about and used today.
That's right. And if you look back, I mean, just look at the Wright brothers, for example. At the time that they are accredited with discovering, building a vehicle that could fly, there were other at almost the exact same time. But
same with the television, same with the telephone. You're absolutely right.
So it is interesting that it there is evidence of what you're saying. And that would be the ultimate cloud, wouldn't it? I mean, if you could tap it.
It is. Well, this is what actually I've never made that analogy before. So thank you, Larry. But what we're calling the 0 point could be thought of as the ultimate cloud.
Yeah.
All information that ever existed. We know what the cloud is in terms of the internet, but the ultimate cloud actually exists. And theorists who are exploring the nature of time and space believe there is no time or space in the sense that we experience it, which would explain why someone could access information from this cloud that seems impossible given our present understanding of reality.
Well, is this part of the basis for Scientology then? Because I know we have some friends in St. Petersburg, and they'll see some Scientologists, and they'll be going to the Gulf and facing the West, just looking up. Is this part of it?
I do that sometimes.
I don't know anything about Scientology, I have to say. So
but I do go to the Gulf sometimes, and I do look up.
But I don't think it has. I don't think that it is related. What I'm talking about is really based on the work of Dr. Irvin Laszlo and current string theorists and people who are really doing the hard science.
Well, and maybe the connection between religion and science is somewhat. Maybe there's some evidence or a hint of a relationship there. It's just that the religious person maybe is deriving his or her beliefs or information from like meditating people who meditate and maybe did it better than they ever did.
Well, no, there's definitely a link. I mean, they're calling it more spirituality than religion, because religion we have to be careful with, because once you have human beings making decisions about what is best for the church, whatever that church may be, it interferes with the pure spiritual meditative truth that they may receive. And it is, I would call meditation a form of intuition, of tapping into the source, which is why we made the movie Tapping the Source.
And I wanted to ask you about that. Is the book The Power of 12 an extension of what Tapping the Source shows?
No, it's complementary, but it's much more engaged with today's reality. And it's everybody knows who George Bush is. Everybody knows the concept of the 1%. I don't talk about the 1%. I talk about the 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/10 of 1%. And at least in the novel The Power of 12, I pose that there's 319 families who are controlling over 90% of the wealth on planet Earth. And I may be exaggerating a little bit. It might be 10,000 families, but there's a very limited number of human beings who really are controlling whether they're in direct contact with each other or not. The political and economic decisions that are taking place at this time.
Oh, there's no question about it. I mean, that is not a conspiracy theory. That is just the absolute truth. And when you talk about newly elected officials becoming corrupted or being found dead or suddenly resigning.
Well, this is what I think is happening. The power elite has the inside scoop on all the world leaders and is able to communicate in the appropriate way in each area of the world. If you do X, why will happen and you don't want to see why happen.
But let me ask you something, William. If indeed that's true, and elected officials are ultimately the ones who make the decisions under which the rest of us have to live, doesn't the invention of something called the e-book, which you were responsible for, doesn't that give the right of the pen is mightier than the sword? So
absolutely. And it is true what we used to say in the 60s, power to the people. The people are powerful, but they have to wake up and they have to take action. And even more powerful than the e-book is the internet. And we are able to connect all 7 billion people, or at least 3.5 billion right now, through the internet. And if everyone just woke up and started saying, we're not, like the old movie Network, we're not going to take it anymore,
right,
we really could make some change.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the power of the people, as you say, to influence the people is always, in my mind, more beneficial to the people than when the few try to, and that's the wisdom.
Absolutely. And one of the things I explore in The Power of 12 is it's not that those who are in control or want to maintain control are necessarily pure evil. Most of them, I mean, the Illuminati itself as a name, it was the enlightened ones. Most people think that they're acting for the benefit of others, but over time, arrogance steps in and they lose that original motivation, whether it was positive or not. And unfortunately, the same happens in many cases with religious leaders. I'm actually very heartened at the new Pope, who seems to be going in a more humane direction of not so much, we've always done it this way, you have to follow the doctrine. No, we're here to serve those who believe in God, and, let's look the other way if there's certain things that we don't feel the doctrine supports.
When babies are born, the babies depend on their parents or whoever the adult is in their life to guide them throughout their life to make the best choices. If some parents were to make that child growing up believe that they were extraterrestrial, they came from another place and they're only here waiting to return, would that child's common sense override all those years of teaching?
Oh, wow, good question.
Probably not. Probably not.
Oh, okay.
I think that children are programmed, and it would have to be more than the parents. It would have to be the entire community. I mean, this is why we get cults. If it's not just the parents, but everyone that child is in contact with for the first 10 years of life, I think they'd be pretty ingrained, and even their own experience wouldn't overcome their beliefs.
Maybe I was convinced that I was from Earth. Maybe I'm really from another planet. Let's go to the phone. William I'm loving this conversation, William, by the way. William Gladstone is our guest. He has made quite a contribution to us and didn't get all the credit he should have because he was one of the creators of the first ebook company, the first print-on-demand book company. He's got a film called Tapping the Source, and, of course, the book that we're focusing on today somewhat, The Power of 12. And let's take a phone call. Good morning. You're on the air with William Gladstone.
Good morning, Mr. Gladstone. You mentioned or you hit on it before about the some of the ancients, like the Mayan the Mayan calendar, and if you look at some of the places like Machu Picchu and how the pyramids and everything were built, and the Egyptian buildings back then. The technology and the stone work, I don't think can be replicated today.
You're absolutely right. It can't be. I was actually the researcher for Rod Serling's In Search of Ancient Mystery and visited every single one of those sites.
Is that right? Wow.
Well, according to what you hear is you can't get a piece of paper between any of those rocks. And if you look at a lot of the stone, the way it was carved, it's interlocking.
You're correct. The technology that was used to build some of these monuments no longer exists and is unknown to us today.
And again, I mean, this whole idea that you can tap into some kind of cosmic knowledge out there somewhere. I think happens for us. Have you ever had? I don't even know if this is an example, but I'm just going to use it. You're up all night trying to figure something out, and it's not happening. So you say, "Forget it, I'm going to bed." Next day you get up, you're making your coffee, whatever, and all of a sudden you have an idea. You go try it, and it works. I often think maybe when we sleep, we're able to better connect with that source, and maybe that's the whole point of sleeping, is that we could be more focused.
There's actually been scientific studies. It's not just in sleeping; it's also changing direction. If you focus on one problem and then suddenly focus on something else and forget the problem, whether you're awake or asleep, often the answer will come to you. And we haven't scientifically figured out exactly why that happens, but it's been documented countless times that it does happen.
Yeah, and I guess what I was getting at before with the cars and why didn't we get the model, whatever, the second model,
Model H,
yeah,
instead of the Model C.
Yeah, why did it evolve like that? But that's kind of true with everything. I mean, look at sound recordings. Mm-hmm. I mean, why didn't we come up with the idea for CDs first?
Yeah.
Maybe that's impossible. I don't know. This is fascinating. So tell me the storyline in The Power of 12, just so we get an idea of the story.
The storyline of The Power of the 12 is pretty simple. It is slightly more enhanced if you've read my first novel, The Power of 12, because I do start with the creator of all that is in the 12 is a fellow named Max. And Max decides he wants to be on Earth because Earth is really cool. It's actually a greater experience than being God. So he stays on Earth, and he leaves to his Council of 12, which is why it's called The Power of 12, the governance of the universe while he's experiencing being a human being. And William the Pen reports to the Council of 12 that there's a crisis on Earth 769. And because of the end of the Mayan calendar, which is really just a representation of the end of cycles that are simultaneously occurring throughout the universe, there's some negative energy on planet 769 Earth, which is really Earth as far as the reader is concerned. And the Illuminati are misguided and are taking actions, including use of GMO and a lot of things that are actually happening on Earth at this time, that are not only going to destroy the planet, but create negative thought forms which will pollute the rest of the universe. And so the Council of 12 and the 13th Apostle make a plea to Max to come back, to leave his Earth existence, and solve this problem. And Max says, no way, guys. I'm really having a great time here. Time for you guys to take control, and you solve it. So their solution is to find certain human beings on Earth 769 and walk into those beings to create Project Wake Up, which will counteract the negative influences of the Illuminati on that planet.
Oh, wow. And take away the 769 and it's us.
It is us. And the main villain is Arnold Wheeler Dealer, who's the grand light and keeper of the code of the Illuminati. And though Arnold Wheeler Dealer is completely fictional, he may actually represent a real person that we...
I think he had a car dealership in this town. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I think I've heard that name before.
But I do base his success on real life experience. Arnie and his family have specialized in buying swampland and other quote unusable land, getting it rezoned, and then building sports stadiums and convention centers and making a fortune, and then giving millions of dollars to charity and becoming seen as the protectors and good guys of the planet, when in fact that's not the case.
Yeah, we call that Walt Disney. That's Walt Disney.
Well, this is so fascinating because in order to have a book of this caliber, you have to make the person that's reading it feel like they're actually part of the story and that this can really, really happen. And with all your research for Rod Serling shows, you must be able to weave the story so the reader does feel like we're part of it.
And I also have had contact with people like Jack Canfield and Barbara Marsh Hubbard and other visionaries who have written about, what it means when we talk about raising consciousness or this new idea of feminine energy. So in addition to having researched the bad guys, I've researched the good guys. And so I really am trying to create a scenario that people can, yes, be entertained by, but when they're done reading the novel, I hope they're going to be thinking, maybe we actually could do this, and maybe we should.
Yeah. The book, again, is called The Power of 12. Let me squeeze in one more phone call, then we'll give websites and stuff out. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning. Two things. I was wondering whether how he picked 769. I mean, adding up those numbers, you get 22, and I'm just wondering if that's significant. And the part about when we either sleep or redirect and go back, or prior the solution or a new idea comes. It's part of, the brain works and new synapses are being made all the time, and the brain is just the most unbelievable computer, right? But I was just wondering about the 769, and thank you, and it sounds like an incredible book.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Is there a reason for the 769?
There actually, except for the possibility that I was not thinking, there's no reason that I know of. But what I discovered after writing both The 12 and The Power of 12 is a lot of the information I put in these novels does have meaning. I just didn't know about it at the time.
Wow. Wow. So
That is
you're actually demonstrating the very principle you're theorizing about.
Yeah, I mean, there's amazing coincidences in The Power of 12 that I had no inkling of at all when I wrote the novel, and it was only after I wrote it that I became aware, and it actually did cause me to make some changes in the second draft.
That sounds
Things
awesome.
about my own life and my own birthday and just all this numerology when I got into it.
Oh, wow. William Gladstone has been our guest, and William, let's see, let's start with the website.
WilliamGladstone.org. They wanted to charge me like $10,000 for my own name because of the William Gladstone Prime Minister, so I just went with .org.
My goodness.
Instead of .com.
What everybody's got money?
That's right.
All right, and is the book? What's the best way? Obviously,
You can get the book. The book should be in most bookstores already. The official publication date is October 1st, but
Okay.
the book has already been shipped and should be showing up any day. And of course, it's already available on Amazon. I have a couple of friends who have ordered on Amazon and have already received the book. And of course, BarnesNoble.com and other independent bookstores.
Great interview. Thank you for getting up early. You're in California, right?
Yeah, and the sun is now up, so I get to see a sunrise.
And where are you in California?
In Cardiff by the Sea, which is just north of San Diego.
Ah, okay. So you can go west and look at the ocean also.
Absolutely.
That's right.
So we can do that at the Gulf. William Gladstone, thank you for being on the air with us today.
It's been a pleasure, Larry.
Great interview. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Look who just walked in the room, Joel Wiesner from What's Up Ocala. Hey, Joel, I'm looking for something to do this weekend. You got any ideas?
Absolutely. Check out our event calendar online at www.whatsupocala.com, and there is plenty of events there for you. Daily news updates to event reviews and magazine articles.
Really?
We've organized it all